You are exactly where you are today because of one thing: decisions. Not your circumstances, not your parents, not your education, your decisions. You decided how to respond to failure. You decided what story to tell yourself when you got rejected. You decided how long to wait before trying again. Your life is the sum total of your choices. Not the ones you made once, but the ones you make every single day. And here's the truth. Every moment, you have the power to choose differently. The difference between the people who thrive and the people who merely survive, it's not intelligence, it's not talent, it's the quality of their decisions. Not just the big ones, the small ones, the daily ones, the ones nobody sees, the decisions you make when you're tired, alone, defeated. Most people think decisions are these grand, life-altering moments. But better decisions start in the micro. You decide whether to get up or hit snooze. You decide what to focus on, what you can control or what you can't. You decide whether your pain becomes your excuse or your fuel. And don't get it twisted, not deciding is still a decision. When you don't choose, life chooses for you. And life doesn't care about your dreams unless you do. If you want to make better decisions, you have to get clear on two things: your standards and your state. Let's talk about standards. Your standards are the invisible rules you've set for yourself. What you tolerate, what you expect, what you demand. Most people make decisions from their feelings, not their standards. But feelings lie. Standards don't. You can feel unmotivated and still decide to show up. You can feel fear and still decide to take action. That's the power of standards. When your standards are high enough, your decisions follow. If your standard is excellence, you won't tolerate average. If your standard is growth, you'll push past comfort. If your standard is love, you'll give it even when you're hurting. The second piece is your state. The emotional state you're in when you make a decision determines its quality. Think about it. Have you ever made a great decision when you were tired, angry, or afraid? Of course not. But when you're confident, clear, calm, you become a different version of yourself. So how do you shift your state? Move your body, shift your focus, change your language. Motion creates emotion. When you stand tall, breathe deep, and move with energy, your brain gets a different signal. Focus on what you're grateful for, what you can control, what you want to create, and use language that empowers you. Say, I will, instead of I'll try. Say, I must, instead of maybe someday. Better state, better choices. Now listen, better decisions don't mean easier decisions. Sometimes the best decision is the hardest one to make. The decision to let go, the decision to start over, the decision to say no. But here's the secret. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you become stronger, and strength compounds. There's a myth that successful people don't struggle with decisions. Wrong. They just don't stay stuck. They train themselves to make decisions fast and stick to them. They know that indecision kills more dreams than failure ever could. You don't need more time, you need more courage. You need to trust yourself. Most people think the problem is they don't know what to do. But deep down, they do. The real problem is they don't trust themselves to do it. So how do you build that trust? You start now. You choose something better right now. Decide to take responsibility. Decide to stop blaming. Decide to stop waiting. Decide to believe in your future more than your past. Decide that from this moment forward, your decisions are going to reflect your highest self, not your fear, not your doubt, not your excuses. Every transformation begins with one decision, one moment when you say, enough. I'm not living like this anymore. One moment when you raise your standard, claim your power, and decide to change everything. And yes, it's scary. Growth always is. But fear is not the enemy. Fear is a compass. It shows you what matters. If it scares you and it grows you, it's probably the right decision. Let me remind you, there's a future version of you waiting. That version is stronger, wiser, more fulfilled. But you don't get to meet that version unless you make the decisions that lead you there. Better health, better relationships, better business, it all comes down to better decisions. And you already have everything inside you to make them. All it takes is clarity, courage, and commitment. No more waiting for the right time. The right time is the moment you decide. No more being reactive. The power is in your hands. You don't get the life you wish for. You get the life you decide to commit to. So today, right now, decide. Decide to live with intention. Decide to lead with your values. Decide to become the kind of person who makes powerful decisions and backs them up with powerful action. Your future starts with a decision. Make it count. Your life is shaped by the decisions you make, not the conditions you face. That truth alone can change everything if you let it sink in. Because the moment you realize that your external circumstances don't define your destiny, you reclaim the power that's always been yours. Too many people spend their lives blaming what's around them, their background, their finances, their education, their upbringing. But history is filled with people who had none of those advantages and still rose to greatness. What they had, what they built within themselves, was the ability to decide. They chose not to be a product of their environment. They chose to respond instead of react. They chose to take the cards they were dealt and play them with absolute intention. The truth is, conditions are never perfect. Waiting for life to be fair, for timing to be ideal, or for someone else to change is a strategy for staying stuck. The difference between those who thrive and those who struggle isn't what happens to them, it's what they do about it. Life will test you. It will throw obstacles in your way. It will hand you pain, loss, disappointment. That's inevitable. What's not inevitable is how you respond. You get to choose your mindset. You get to choose your actions. You get to choose what story you attach to the events of your life. And that choice, that decision, determines your trajectory more than any extraordinary factor ever could. When you look at people who have built extraordinary lives, you'll see that their conditions didn't always look favorable at the start. But they didn't wait to be rescued. They didn't let limitation become their identity. They made a decision to rise, a decision to grow, a decision to take control over what they could and let go of what they couldn't. The moment you realize your decisions are more powerful than your circumstances, you stop giving your power away. You stop blaming the past. You stop negotiating with your doubts. You begin to build a future on purpose. That's what separates those who live life by design from those who live life by default. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to decide. Decide who you want to be, what you will no longer tolerate, what you will no longer tolerate, what you're willing to commit to. Decisions are the hinges that swing the doors of destiny. Yeah. Something that Jeff Parker, the founder of the Dev company, said, commitment is the sign. This is a definition that swing the doors of destiny. Every breakthrough, Every turning point, every elevation in your life will begin with a decision that was made not in comfort, but in clarity and courage. And here's the beautiful paradox. Your current conditions are actually the perfect soil for growth if you choose to see them that way. Struggle builds strength. Scarcity fuels creativity. Pain can spark purpose, but only if you decide to respond with intention. Too often people look at where they are and say, I can't, but what they really mean is, I won't decide. Because deciding is risky. It's uncomfortable. It demands responsibility. But on the other side of that decision is power. Power to shift your life. Power to redefine what's possible. Power to rewrite the narrative you've been living. Your conditions may have shaped your past, but your decisions may have shaped your future. They shape your habits, your beliefs, your relationships, your results. You can't control the economy, other people's opinions, or the events of the world, but you can control what you choose to focus on, what meaning you assign, and what you do next. That's the edge, that's the leverage, that's where your freedom lives. Indecision is the ultimate thief of potential. It doesn't just delay your progress, it silently erodes your confidence, your momentum, and your clarity. Most people don't fail because they made the wrong choice. They fail because they couldn't make any choice at all. They get stuck in the loop of what ifs in fear of making a mistake, in the illusion that more time will bring more certainty. But time doesn't solve indecision. Action does. Every minute spent hesitating is a minute lost building. Every hour of overthinking is an hour of opportunity slipping away. Potential is useless if it never becomes action. And indecision is what traps potential in a cage of doubt. You may have the greatest idea, the most brilliant plan, the strongest desire, but if you can't decide, it dies in your mind instead of living in the world. What makes indecision so dangerous is that it feels safe. It gives the illusion of control. You think by waiting, you're being wise. You think by analyzing, you're being smart. But wisdom is in action, and clarity comes from movement. The longer you stay in hesitation, the heavier it gets. Doubt grows, fear multiplies, confidence fades, and before you know it, your window closes. You look back months or years later and realize you were one decision away the whole time. One step, one choice, one moment of courage. Indecision robs you of that moment and replaces it with regret. The tragedy isn't that people aim high and miss. It's that they aim low or never aim at all. They sit on the fence so long that they forget what they were even trying to build in the first place. The truth is, not deciding is still a decision. It's a decision to stay the same. It's a decision to avoid responsibility. It's a decision to hand your power to circumstance. And the more you do it, the more it becomes a habit. You train your brain to second guess. You train your spirit to hesitate. You reinforce the belief that you are not capable of leading your own life. And that belief kills more dreams than failure ever could. Because failure teaches. Failure builds resilience. Failure sharpens focus. But indecision teaches nothing. It's passive. It's empty. It's a slow erosion of your fire. You don't need to know every step. You don't need guarantees. You need to trust that you can handle what comes. That even if you get it wrong, you'll learn, adapt, and grow stronger. Decision is a muscle, and like any muscle, it gets stronger with use. And the more you practice making bold, clear decisions, the more you build self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of every great life. When you trust yourself, you stop looking outside for answers. You stop waiting for permission. You stop hiding behind the need for more certainty. You move, you lead, you create. Life rewards the bold, not the hesitant. It opens doors for the decisive. The opportunities you want are on the other side of clarity. The relationships you desire, the health you envision, the impact you dream of, they all require decisions you haven't made yet. And the longer you delay, the further those outcomes drift. Don't confuse movement with progress. You can be busy and still be stuck if you're avoiding the real decisions, the ones that scare you, the ones that stretch you, the ones that require you to let go of comfort and step into the unknown. Everything you want is on the other side of a decision, not just any decision, but the one that aligns with your higher self, the one that reflects your values, not your fears, the one that moves you forward even if the path isn't fully lit. When you decide, you activate a force inside you that was dormant. You shift from passive observer to active creator. You stop watching life and start shaping it. The cost of indecision isn't just time, it's who you could have become. It's the life you were meant to live but never claimed. It's the person you were born to be, waiting behind a door only you can open. Raise your standards and your decisions will follow. The quality of your life is directly linked to the standard you set for yourself. What you believe you deserve, what you're willing to tolerate, and what you're committed to becoming. When you live with low standards, your decisions reflect it. You choose what's easy over what's right. You settle for comfort over growth. You make decisions based on fear instead of purpose. But when you raise your standards, you change the game. Suddenly the decisions you make have to align with a higher level of integrity, discipline, and vision. You stop asking, what can I get away with, and start asking, what do I expect from myself at my best? Most people don't realize that their standards are shaping their reality. They believe life is just happening to them, but in truth, they are living out the results of the standards they've accepted. If your standard is to show up when you feel like it, you'll live a life of inconsistency. If your standard is to just get by, your results will always hover around mediocrity. But if your standard is to give your best regardless of how you feel, your actions change. Your mindset sharpens, your energy aligns. The decisions that once seemed difficult become non-negotiable because they are no longer a matter of motivation, they are a matter of identity. You don't get what you want, you get what you demand from yourself. You get what your standards require. And that begins with making a decision about who you are and what you will stand for. When you raise your standards, you raise the level of what is acceptable in your life. You say no to toxic relationships. You say no to half-hearted effort. You say no to excuses. And with every no to the lower version of yourself, you say yes to the person you're becoming. This is simple. When you raise your standards, you say yes to the person you're becoming. Raising your standards doesn't mean perfection. It means refusing to operate below your capacity. It means holding yourself accountable to a vision greater than your emotions. It means being honest with yourself when your actions aren't matching your ambition. And when that honesty kicks in, you make different decisions. You take responsibility. You stop blaming. You start waiting. You start building momentum based on alignment, not pressure. There's a shift that happens when standards rise. The decisions that once required willpower now come from a deeper place. Your values. You no longer ask, can I do this? But how can I do this in a way that reflects the highest version of me? You begin choosing your nutrition based on energy, not craving. You begin structuring your time based on purpose, not distraction. You begin speaking and acting in ways that mirror your deepest beliefs. That shift creates a foundation where discipline doesn't feel like a burden, it becomes a form of self-respect. And here's the powerful truth. Once you raise your standards and back them with consistent decisions, your external world starts to mirror your internal world. People treat you differently. Opportunities show up differently. Challenges no longer intimidate you. They become invitations to rise. Because your decisions are now filtered through a different lens, a lens of strength, clarity, and excellence. Every day becomes an opportunity to either reinforce your standard or betray it. And in that choice, you're constantly shaping who you are and what life becomes for you. The standards aren't just rules, they're the invisible blueprint of your future. Set them high, and your decisions will rise to meet them. Emotion drives decisions. Master your state, master your choices. Every decision you make is influenced by the emotional state you are in at the moment of making it. When you're in a peak state, full of energy, certainty, and clarity, you make bold, empowered decisions. But when you're tired, overwhelmed, anxious, or uncertain, your decisions shrink. You hesitate, you doubt, you compromise. The difference isn't in the circumstance, it's in your state. That's why mastering your emotional state is the key to mastering your life. You can have all the strategies, all the knowledge, all the skills, but if you're in the wrong state, you won't use any of them. You'll talk yourself out of action. You'll play small. You'll choose safety over growth. And that's how potential gets wasted. Not from a lack of resources, but from a lack of resourcefulness created by a poor emotional state. State isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you can create. You can condition it. You can train it. You can shift it in an instant when you know how. Your physiology, your focus, and your language are the three forces that shape your state. Change how you move, and you change how you feel. Change what you focus on, and you change what you believe is possible. Change the words you use to describe your experience, and you change the meaning of that experience. When you combine all three, you unlock power on demand. Power to decide with strength. Power to move with certainty. Power to act when most would freeze. You can't make powerful decisions in a disempowered state. If you try to plan your future while focused on your fears, you'll create a future built on limitation. If you try to solve problems while focused on what's missing, you'll overlook what's already working. If you try to lead others while filled with doubt, you'll communicate hesitation instead of vision. Your state bleeds into your choices, and your choices shape your reality. That's why elite performers, world-class leaders, and fulfilled individuals don't wait to feel good to act. They act to feel good. They don't hope for a peak state, they generate it. Mastery begins with awareness. Start noticing how your state shifts your decisions. Think back to times when you were calm, clear, and energized. How did you handle challenges? Now think about moments when you were stressed, frustrated, or afraid. How different were your choices? It becomes clear that state isn't a detail, it's the foundation. That's why daily rituals matter. The way you prime your mind and body each day directly affects the quality of your decisions. Whether it's exercise, breath work, gratitude, or visualization, these practices aren't luxuries, they are necessities for emotional mastery. The truth is, life will test your state daily. Traffic, conflict, setbacks, uncertainty. All of it can knock you off center if you let it. But if you train yourself to catch the shift early, to interrupt the pattern and get back to a peak state, you regain control. You regain the power to choose consciously, not react emotionally. You stop making decisions from your wounds and start making them from your wisdom. You stop being pulled by your circumstances and start being led by your vision. No great decision has ever been made in a state of fear. No powerful legacy has ever been built on a foundation of hesitation and doubt. Your emotional state is either your greatest asset or your greatest liability. When you learn how to master it, when you condition yourself daily to live in strength, focus, gratitude, and certainty, your decisions reflect that strength. And those decisions compound into a life that is driven by purpose, not pressure. Every powerful transformation begins with one courageous decision. Change doesn't happen in the future. It happens in a single moment when you finally decide you've had enough, when you draw the line, when you step beyond fear and into action. That moment might look small on the outside, but it is massive on the inside. It's the instant you reclaim your power. The second you stop waiting for life to hand you something better and start creating it for yourself. People often wait for the perfect conditions, the right time, the right mood, but all real change begins when you decide that where you are is no longer acceptable. That decision becomes the spark. It breaks the cycle. It tears through excuses. It gives birth to a new standard, a new identity, a new path. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you choose to act despite the fear. That one bold decision to move forward, even when your voice shakes and your heart races, sets the foundation for every breakthrough that follows. Because courage compounds. The first courageous decision is the hardest, but it creates momentum. It shows you that fear isn't fatal, that discomfort won't destroy you, that you're stronger than the story you've been telling yourself. With every step you take beyond that first brave choice, you begin building a version of yourself that is driven by vision, not by history. Transformation's not about waiting for permission. It's about declaring that the person you've been is not the person you are committed to becoming. That declaration is a decision. It is a mental shift, a turning point that rewrites your relationship with your past, your present, and your future. One courageous decision to stop settling, to stop lying to yourself, to stop hiding behind excuses can open the door to a life that reflects your true potential. It doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require a master plan. It only requires honesty and guts. The honesty to face where you've been playing small and the guts to do something different. The most meaningful changes rarely begin with massive action. They begin with a silent inner decision to no longer live the same way. It might be a decision to heal, to forgive, to commit, to start, to stop. That decision is like planting a flag in the ground and saying, this is who I am now. And once you plant that flag, everything shifts. The way you talk to yourself changes, the people you attract change, the standards you uphold change. Because your identity begins to align with your decision, and that alignment is where transformation takes root. There's a voice inside everyone that whispers what needs to be done. Most people silence it because it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or scary. But those who listen, those who follow that voice and make the bold decision it calls for, are the ones who reshape their lives. They don't wait to feel ready. They don't wait to have all the answers. They decide, and then they figure it out. And through that process, they become someone new, someone powerful, someone who leads, creates, and lives on purpose. The world doesn't change until you do, and you don't change until you decide. That's why one courageous decision carries so much weight. It's not about the action itself, it's about what it represents. It represents ownership. It represents commitment. It represents the end of waiting and the beginning of becoming. Every great story has a moment where the hero steps forward, not because the path is clear, but because the pain of standing still has become too great. That moment is not reserved for the extraordinary. That moment is not reserved for the extraordinary. It is available to anyone at any time who is willing to choose courage over comfort.